By 1872, the Central Pacific Railroad, with the help of Chinese workers, completed rail service into Fresno County. Shortly thereafter, railroad owners mapped out a new township, named streets, and sold plots of land. In 1874, the city of Fresno officially came to be. One of the thorny issues in 1874 was what to do with the Chinese in the city. Violence was driving Chinese from many cities throughout California. In spite of anti-Chinese prejudice, Chinese were needed as a reliable labor force in Fresno's growing agribusiness. The Fresno solution was to relocate the Chinese into designated areas west of the train tracks. The Chinese could work in nearby farms but return to Chinatown when the work was done. When needed, Chinatown overnight swelled with extra workers from outside Fresno. These workers would leave when the work was done, a forerunner of the seasonal migrant farm workers of today. In a rare overview photo of Fresno's Chinatown, one can see how overcrowded it was, permitted to live in a very limited space with summer heat. It made perfect sense for the Chinese to create an underworld. It made perfect sense for the Chinese to create an underground world. In a rare overview photo of Fresno's Chinatown, one can see how overcrowded it was, permitted to live in a very limited space with summer heat. It made perfect sense for the Chinese to create an underground world.
But so some of you know what this is?
Yes.
What is it?
They used to bring things up from the ground, forget what you call it, conveyor, elevator, yeah.
Yeah, kind of, sort of, but not quite as fancy. Very few of these you'll find, but you'll find most of them around Chinatown. They actually open up, and it's a straight shot to the basement that we're going to go into. And most of them, they were hooked up to like a wooden chute, and that's one of the things that you're going to see. So people would have items picked up here, open it up, and send the stuff down. And that was one of the reasons why we do have connective tunnels, because what you'll see in Chinatown is what you see above ground is below. We have the same size basements that go from one end of the block to the other. And the tunnels, when people talk about them, when I talk about, are connectors. You could take things across the street or down the alleys, which made perfect sense, and we'll talk about that as we go. Okay, a little steep, there you go. Okay. Are we coming to the last? Oh, good, good, good. Oh, Martha, okay, watch the step. Okay, Martha, it's a little steep. When you first come down, it's like, I said, take a breath when we're up there. I know some of you going, actually, it's gotten better down here. Well, there are some days when it rains, it's kind of like, ooh, musty. But, okay, now, when you were coming down the stairs, did you notice something? Now, would you want to carry heavy things up that stair? No. But if you look, those are archways. And those are built into the walls, and those went across the way. The metal lifts that you saw, or the top, go there, and if you look up in there, you could actually see the sunlight. But that's one of the chutes that come down. It's still there. It had been replaced, years ago. But if you take a look, if you go straight in there, you'll see that you could see sunlight. And the question for a lot of people is why they would be so close together, unless there are burial walls separating different places. So, because that did make a lot of sense, and we'll see when we look at the doors that we found, or that are here, why they would be so close together, and that was because some of this was divided. Right now we're in the third business from upstairs. And when we go through the next side, we'll be going like about 4 businesses, and 4 or 5 businesses. And then if you look, there's a lot of piping and wiring and the work. So it's not that people don't know things exist, it's just that people don't like to talk about it. But look down on the ground a minute. What do you see? Concrete. Kind of bizarre that you have old basements and almost every single basement that I've been in is concreted. The same if you go down our alleys. Take a look, they're concreted. So what we believe happens, and we've talked to a couple other people, is that this was deeper when the concrete was down, because if you look, this is, excuse me, I'm going to flip this back up again. This is awfully close to people's heads. So we do believe that there's another sub area. We haven't been able to get down there, but we do have a hole that's over on this side. Watch your head here. That's a real sharp little corner, by the way, I've hit that. And there's a plank of wood. So be careful, up and down, remember, up and down. And we've had people, we're never quite sure where some of these stairways go to, because a lot of them are blocked. But this is one that we actually had put a cover on, and it goes down about 2 feet, but it's to a dirt flooring. So we know that there's dirt down here. And then if you look, because if you look at the edge where the walls are, if you look down, and what you see, yeah, watch, this one is very low and has nasty little corners, okay, is that the bricks on the flooring, on the base of it, which is an interesting, the way that they've stacked it up to hold up the walls, is very old. But those bricks were set up so that it helps brace up the walls, okay? So as we go down this way, or another big, oops, there's a big, this one is a great big, this was a large kind of central doorway. Okay, and then this one was just closed recently. And that's another archway going into another connecting basement.
Both of these doors were open when I...
And you can tell that they chopped through, this had been a solid wall at one time, because the only entranceway would have been around that side. But here we go. Wow, that's one thing about smells and stuff, is your nose kind of dies. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll switch over. I mean, the ones that are up here will go just to where those guys are. Okay. Okay, this is one of the doors that we found, and when you have a chance to look at it, it is a handmade door. It was fit into this archway. These are handmade bolts that held the door together, and when I first saw it, there were like little scratch marks. But this was a peephole going into the next basement or building or whatever is going on. So you could peek, and what you'll see is the next basement. But if you could tell when you look at this, it has to open inward. There's no way for it to open outward. It was closed. And then if you look behind you, let me squish this, is another archway that has been bricked in. Most of that bricking is only 1 brick thick. Okay, all right, now let me switch with you guys. This is our second door that we found, and as you can see that it opens outward, but it's a handmade door. You could tell that it was, as opposed to the other door, had to be fitted into that section, but it's all handmade. Those are handmade bolts and hinges for it. And so that's, and they were pretty narrow people, because that had to go in sideways. But when you think about it and you ask yourself, why would there be 2 very solid doors within 10 feet of each other going into different things? So what we know about this is that the basements were divided up between different businesses and different activities going on. But this is one door that opens outward, the other door opens inward. But this is one, if you take a look at it, those are all handmade hinges. So it is quite old.
What kind of activity?
Well, as soon as you look at that, we'll go in the next little room and I'll talk about it, okay? Here we go. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Now this one you don't have to worry, there's no really low poles. Okay, breathe deep. Okay, here we go. Now we're in the 4th business, up there. Okay. Yeah, you just have to watch for these pillars. There's no piers, but there's pillars. Okay. Then it'll go into the question of what kind of businesses Chinatown had. Okay. So you do need to come in here. There we go. Don't mind me as I lean against the wall. Not only did I snap my foot off, but I have 2 herniated discs. So let's see. Are we gathering everybody? So, any questions so far? Yeah. No, someone can holler if you had a question that was burning on your mind.
Do you know like which activity might have happened in particular rooms? Because there's like opium rooms, right, and brothels, and...
Well, that's why when we get everybody in here, at least for this one room, that there is documentation.
So have you actually had a chance, has anyone gone back to those rooms that were with the people? Has anyone been back?
We've been trying to work with the city. Is that everybody, Martha? Yes. Okay. There is a map called the Sanborn Maps, and they were with the fire department. The city of Fresno has it, that the fire department actually have of the Chinatown area above and below. And so that's so that they could go through and double check to see how things, and we'll take a look at one door that's actually a fire door. But this is one of the rooms that appears on the map. It is much deeper than it, because you can see, again, it's all concrete. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do, and this goes to the question of what kind of activities went on down here. One, it was used for storage because it made sense where if you didn't have the room upstairs. The tunnels made sense to transport things back and forth. It was sometimes used for rooms, of which I know I saw bedding and a table when the city of Fresno cracked open a top of a tunnel when they were putting the storm drain through for the stadium on China Alley between E and F, of which 24 hours later they promptly filled with slurry, put a metal slab down, and then continued with a storm drain to the stadium. We have another story. That's why we're not real confident that if they cut into another one, city/high-speed rail, that they're going to do any kind of archaeological investigation. The other one is a story that we have from the guy that was doing one of the construction folks for the stadium. He couldn't figure out why the water was going down in the stadium in one section. He had the crew dig, they dug, and they went down pretty far down, and they found a cavern. They found a late model, a very old kind of truck on a road facing Chinatown. So he rappelled down, looked around, was ordered by the city manager, the guy who was in charge of the stadium, to get out. 24 hours later, without any kind of research, was filled in with concrete and slurry in his right field of the stadium. So that tells you how far within the city commitment to documentation of Chinatown. Now, turn your lights off. Turn your lights off. Okay, yeah, lights off, a second. Okay, light off. Okay, now, imagine that you're 14, 15, 16 years old. You are recruited in China or Japan to be a nursemaid, a cook, a nanny, a housekeeper. You were on the boat, you came across, and when you got to California, you were presented with a bill. And you were told either you had the bill or you're going to go in jail. Some people leapt off the boats. Others came to Fresno. This one room is identified on the Sanborn maps as a crib, C-R-I-B. When I was at Vista in the southern states in the 70s, I thought it was all the guys talking about their apartment. When they said, hey man, why don't you come to my crib, you know? And I thought, okay, so when I found out it was called a crib. But a crib is a designation of a house of prostitution. So this is one of the rooms that was identified. We had above ground and below ground houses of prostitution or ill repute. My grandfather had his business, a pool hall in China Alley, in between a bar and a house of ill repute. So I know before he sent for my grandmother as a picture bride, he was either in the bar or the house of ill repute, because they're either for a Chinese community or Japanese community. Okay, if you can imagine, okay, someone's cheating with their lights on. There you go. That you're down here, you have a small lamp, you have a small cot, you have a little table, you're in a room of about 4 feet, enough for the cot and someone to stand there, about 5, 6 feet long, and there's a curtain at the end. And you're down here. There was a skylight that allowed some light in. You were in this area for anywhere from 16 to 18 hours a day, waiting for a new customer to come. And this was day in, day out, year after year. Many of the young women died. Some of them killed themselves, some of them tried to run away. A very, very few of them did pay the bill. They did get married, they did establish themselves with their own family. Some of them are in the Fresno area. It's a very touchy subject for most of the folks, but to me, they are survivors. They are the warriors. They are what truly to me means to setting new roots in a new country. And they did it after being in a place like this for years. Okay, you can turn your lights back on. There you go. Okay, and I know it's kind of like, ew! Because when you're down here and you're thinking, I don't want to see that curtain move. Okay, but here we go. But this one has divided up into maybe about, what do we say, 30 plus rooms, 30 plus cubicles. Okay, here we go. We're going into, now we're probably into about the fourth business. above. Okay, watch yourself, pillars, and there's a big pole. Okay, watch yourself. Okay, look. Here we go. This is another one that's cleared up with another set of stairs. Too funny. Okay, now I'm trying to think of what street that is, because as you come in, people keep taking these out. People are collecting bricks, and our walls are going to fall shortly. Yeah, we had one wall in Chinatown that was officially knocked down by the city. That was one of the oldest walls in the area, but a guy drove his car through it to take bricks for his yard. So, but this is another chute, and if you look up, that's another one that goes, but that's an older one, and it's actually been cleaned. I don't know, whoop, okay, well, I'm not sure where the stuff went, because we don't own this stuff. We only could take a guess. But if you look up at that one, you could see really what those the metal shaft looks like from the under area. But that was a straight, kind of real straight shot down. But if you look up, you could see the bottom of the metal. That one was what you would call a swift kind of a chute.
I don't like to walk on those things because I never express how old they are.
Oh, oh, no problem, no problem.
No. I mean, yeah, in New York City, like even when I was going to, I never liked walking on them as a kid. My dad used to go, just walk on them. I'd be like, no, I don't want to.
Well, you can see if you're walking on them, unless it's welded shut, you had a better idea not to walk on them. Okay, we have more archways, more that have been filled in. And then, actually I have to tell you, this is the door that the Fresno Fire Department, I have to search them every time we do a tour for the Fresno Fire Department because they want this door. As I said, it's an example of an old style fire door. And this is actually a handmade weight that would actually send the door across when there was a fire. So the fire department wants it as an example in their museum. So far I have to frisk them each time they're down here. Actually, I just want to frisk them if they couldn't carry the door. But so as you can see, the way that it was set up and how old it is, why they would want it. Because if you look at it, it's a handmade door, fire door, and that would slide across. So, and we were looking at that one chute. If some of you had a chance to look, you could actually see the bottom of the metal grating that goes on the sidewalk upstairs. So, what we know from possibly, this room was again used for storage. There were some of the places used for gaming. We have one story of a gentleman who's probably about 10 years older than I am, that his father was a police officer and took him to China Alley, and before they had the covering, they had grating. And so his father said, shh, and the guy was about 10 years old, and he kept telling him, shh. And so he bent down to the grating, and his father had him listen. He said you could hear people, as he said, speaking Chinese. Well, he said something else, but I am about 10 years older than me. But he said you could hear the clacking of like dice or other kinds of things, and people yelling like, oh, yeah, you know, like they made it or won or something. And he said, are people down there? And his father said, shh, and they had to walk away. So we had some of the rooms used for gaming and prostitution, storage, housing, because at different times it's much cooler down here than it would be upstairs in the rooms. People, when they were here in Chinatown, would either live upstairs from their business or in back. And when they could, they moved toward West Fresno, which is one reason why for Chinatown we've been torn up by transportation. The first one was a railroad track, and that one cut off and went through Chinese Josh House, where we have the little man. The other one was the highway that came through. And if you know that, if you count the alphabet going through, you notice there's no, A, B, C, D Street is gone. That used to have all kinds of houses. Part of the Germantown was there. And then people that could, when they were establishing themselves, would buy a home there. So you had parts of West Fresno that were a microcosm of Chinatown. You had Chinese, Japanese, Italian, Mexican-American folks all having homes there, and they all relocated. Germans from Volga, Russia, Armenian folks, because all those homes were taken out. And so we don't have a lot of confidence in how things may go with high-speed rail. But one of the two funny stories I have to tell you, one is Angie Cisneros, who used to be, she's very active in the community, but she was raised here. And she said that they moved, her parents bought a house right on D Street. And so next door neighbors were a Chinese family that had a restaurant here. And when they closed down the shop, she and her brothers would wait until the grandmother would yell over the fence, food, and the whole family would go over and eat with the family. They really couldn't, the parents couldn't really speak, or the grandparents couldn't speak with each other, but they would all have dinner, what was left over from the restaurant. Sal Quintero, some of you know Sal from City Council. He has a great story that, because he was raised in Malaga and his friends, they used to go bottle hunting, which is kind of illegal. You use a long stick and you poke in the ground until you find something that clinks. Yeah. People told him, hey man, you gotta go to Chinatown, they're tearing down another building. So what he did and his friends, they rode their bikes, came over here, and there was a big wrecking ball, and there was one wall left standing. And that's the other thing, if you know that there's a lot of empty lots, that was all full of buildings that have all been torn down. But every one of those lots, if you dig underneath, has a basement. So he said they stood there and the wrecking ball hit the wall and it crumbled. But he said there was like this arch of a rainbow in the sunlight. It had red and blue and yellow and green, and it hit the ground. And so when the wrecking ball left, the guys all went there with their bikes and took a look at the ground. And they were opium bottles that had been put into the walls either for safekeeping or when they were being raided or whatever happened. And no one ever thought that they were of value, and they were just, and I told him, I said, it's a tragedy, but what a glorious end to just be this rainbow. And he said, yeah, he said he'd always remember that. So, okay, here we go. Now, you could take that route down, because we're just about down, or we could go this way to the A tour. Okay. You guys are good. Okay, look out for the brick, the block. Okay. But so you can go the other way if you like. You can go the other way if you don't want to go this way, but there you go. Okay. Now you can go that direction if you like, or you can go here. I know it's a very cheap A tour. Okay. Some of you know what that is, or can you tell me what you think it is?
It's probably like a stove hood.
It's a stove hood. Don't you think that they would be little tiny, tiny people if you had a stove there and that was a hood? So you know that the floor was much lower. Okay, because if that's where the stove hood was, where was the stove? And if you had to stand in front of it, you'd have to be munchkins to be able to use it. So you know that this entire flooring was much lower. Watch your heads and watch the floor. Whoop, whoop. And there's one that goes crazy. Okay, my timekeeper. She went. What is the time right now?
10:50.
Oh, okay. Oh, good, good. Then we'll be in time. They're working on your snow cones. But here we go. Yeah, come on this way. There we go. Okay. Now this is making sure we haven't lost anybody. Yeah. I do have to tell you about the sumo ring.
Oh, yeah, but we've got time still.
Okay, she was just telling me it's 10:50, so probably in about 5 more minutes we'll go up, and then hopefully with the snow cones we'll be ready for people.
I'm going to go and lock the door, but if somebody would follow her up the stairs, that would be awesome. But don't listen to me.
Careful going up, Martha. Okay. That's about no, we're missing some people, but you'll find us. Okay. Hopefully. Otherwise, so far I haven't found little skeletons yet. Although we've gotten quite a few requests from the paranormal community. In fact, last tour, you guys are going, one lady was taking pictures and she said, look, there's a little ball that's flying around. And so somebody else, when the volunteer said, I think she has a dusty camera. And I said, shh. But she said, it can't be a dust mote because it's going upward. And I went, I don't even want to see, because for the amount of time that I'm down here, I don't want to know if we have friends down here. But This one? Oh.
When we did it in that back room, there was little things floating that you could see.
Okay, well, and did you tell them thank you that we didn't want to disturb them? Okay, good. That's the only thing that I could say is for the people that have come down have shown a lot of respect. And that's why I don't think anything follows anybody around because, this is their home. But there used to be a sumo ring in Chinatown. And the sumo ring upstairs, we've got some pictures of the professional sumo wrestlers that came from Japan. And I have some other pictures in some boxes that are money trees. And what they are is money is tied together and set up like 6, 8, 10 feet. And that's money that's either donated to the organization or betting. So my grandfather, because my grandfather had his pool hall here, my dad was born in China Alley and my grandfather's pool hall in 1913. So my dad, from all of his youth running around Chinatown, would have been 102, or he'll be 102 this October. So part of the reason I do this is he used to tell me all kinds of stories, and they'd go, as kids, they go up one side and down the other. So a lot of what I do, when someone says, aren't you Chinese? I said, no, Japanese American, third generation. But because of my grandfather's history and my father's history, this is the way that I could tell them thank you. Although some of the stories I tell, I'm quite sure my grandfather's not thanking me. But he was this side of legal, meaning that he was an alcohol runner, a few other things. But he was also thought he could sumo wrestle. He thought he could wrestle. Man looked like a little bantam rooster. And when he took his clothes off, he kind of glowed because he had a farmer's tan from about here in his hands. But when he took off his clothes and had the little loincloth, he kind of glowed because he was so pale. So he had a nickname of like Little White. So he would get in the sumo ring. There'd be these huge professional sumo wrestlers from Japan. They would promptly pick him up and jet propel him out of the ring. So what he did with some of his friends, who were also this side of not what you say extremely legal, he would go back in, they would bet against him. And he would kind of run as fast as he could around the ring, away from the other sumo wrestlers, sort of sideways, crabbing, until they gave him a high sign that said they placed the bets. Then he'd kind of stop, they'd pick him up and propel him out of the ring. So after he picked himself off, dusted himself off, he would go with his friends and they would collect the money that they bet against him. So he was, not above being creative in how he made some money. But when World War II happened, my father went to Roosevelt High School, and he was in one of the all-night cafes next to the Swan's Bakery. And if anybody had ever heard of Swan's Bakery, it was a Chinese family. It was wonderful. You'd find all the fire department and police department there. But so they were sitting at a booth, and they're watching. Their radio was saying about what was going on, and my dad was like, I never knew he could talk when I was younger. So apparently I'm a lot like him, where the mouth doesn't stop. But he's like, those people in Japan are stupid. I don't know why they bombed, blah. And his friends are saying, and they're wearing like, because they were track, whatever stuff. So they're all proud about going to Roosevelt. They said, Fred, you gotta be quiet, shut up. He says, what? We're U.S. citizens. We didn't have anything to do with it. And then their friend said, look at the counter, man, look at the counter. And they looked, and the folks were like getting ready to kill him. So they had to hustle my dad out. And he's like, well, that's damn stupid, all this kind of stuff. And then when the restrictions came in, my grandfather was still a sharecropper around the Sangha River bottom. But they had a piece of farm that they were doing in West Fresno. So my dad would get him, bring him to Chinatown, leave him here early in the morning, then go on to the farm area, harvest in the crop, and then in the middle of the night or in the evening, pick him up, rip-roaring drunk. He stayed drunk until everybody was sent to the relocation center, the assembly center, and then to post in Arizona. But so my grandfather figured, what the hell? I'm just going to stay drunk. So he did. But if it wasn't for, and I know some people will say, Kathy, but if it wasn't for the relocation and the camps, my father and his family, a lot of people from the Fresno area went to post in Arizona, which is outside Parker, Arizona, which is outside Las Vegas. It's like nothing there. And my mom was from San Diego. And the reason that I'm here is their marriage was arranged. They had no idea who each other were, because my mom was a housekeeper or nanny for Admiral Ringel of the Pacific Fleet. And she would go from the Gaslight District. Are some of you familiar with San Diego? There's a gaslight district that used to be the JA in Chinatown, a Japanese American community. She would take the bus and go to Coronado and then do her work and then come back. She had to stay over in Coronado a day or two because there were roving bands pulling people, men, women, children off of buses and beating them up. And so when she finally got back to the gaslight district, she said it was nothing. The windows were open, curtains were flapping, dogs and cats were walking around. She said you could hear birds in cages in the apartments, in the rooms upstairs. Nobody, no businesses were closed, all the apartments all closed. So she had to find my grandmother, my grandfather, her brother, and her sisters. And what had happened is 2 days before, they had all been told that they could only take what they could carry in a suitcase, one suitcase per person. And then they were loaded on buses and taken to the racetrack. The race had just been run, the horses were cooled down, the hay was changed, and the families from the San Diego area that were Japanese American were put in the horse stalls until they were put on the train and sent to Poston, Arizona. So my mother found them. So her entire family of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people were in one stall for a few days, almost not quite a week, until they were able to get on the train. That all the shades were down and the armed guards. And these were my grandfather, my grandmother, and she was the oldest. She was about 18, 19, and the youngest was about 4 or 5. She does tell a funny story about when the guard is coming around counting for each family and they're given a number. They said, okay, there's 8 of you. And they said, no, there's only 7. No, there's 8 of you. I see 8 heads. And so the youngest one, Irene, had a teddy bear. And the teddy bear's head was right next to her. And so the soldier was counting the teddy bear. So they had to say, no, does that mean we get more rations? No. But so, and the marriage was arranged because my mom was from San Diego, my dad was up here. They would have never known each other. And the interesting thing when we talk about diverse communities, that probably the camps were one of the reasons why, oh, I know they're going to hate me for saying this, I'm sorry, why the gay community, the Japanese American gay community found each other. Because what you had, and my mom used to say, or dad said, oh yeah, the guys with the shoulders, they'd put the jackets over their shoulders. And I worked with the senior center here, and one of the senior ladies said, that's one of them. And I thought, and so he did. He still wore his jacket over his, kind of like over his shoulders this way. But because they were so few and far between and isolated, they thought they were the only ones. But when they had camps, they were able to get together. They weren't the only ones who had an alternative lifestyle. So it's an interesting situation. It was a long time taken out of family's history. My family, someone else was asking about how I found out. I found out about the camps when I was in my 20s. Because when my parents would meet somebody, they'd say, oh, well, what camp were you in? What? And I thought they were talking about summer camp. I had no idea when they talked about camps that they were talking about if you're camp 1, 2, 3, whatever, and like Poston, Jerome, Loneheart. There's a book that we have upstairs that people have pictures of what it was like for them in Arkansas. So as far as the life, it was just, they didn't talk about it. And it was my generation that we first started the tours to the camps. And the first one that we did up to Tule Lake. A group of us went, we had a couple buses. We were told by the police department, and this is in the mid-70s, later 70s, when the first tour, there were only maybe a handful, not even a handful, about 3 or 4 seniors who were in the camp went with us. All of them were younger. But the sheriff up there had said, you have to stay in the grounds because there are people driving around who are threatening to hurt you guys. And this was in the 70s. So it dawned on me that what we do need to do is talk with each other. We need to share stories. That's what's so important for us being here in Chinatown, and for your support. We want to thank you. On behalf of my family, I'm 3rd generation here in the area. On behalf of the Board of Directors for Chinatown Revitalization and the community of Fresno Chinatown, we want to just thank you for sharing this time with us. We appreciate your support because we know that that's how we will be able to survive into the future, and respect for the communities that call Chinatown home, and in the education of future generations to know where they came from, who they are, and where they can go. So thank you again. We appreciate this very much.